Hello, wrestling fans. I am Tom Colohue, and I'm live on YouTube and on Twitch right now for your viewing pleasure to preview Monday Night Raw, which will be happening in, I want to say, 7 hours. So I know I'm a bit early, but this is in the UK, so WWE Raw starts at 1 a.m. over here. There may be times when I go a bit later. That's something I've got to consider as to the timing, but I am starting here and now. And this week we are calling it the Becky Lynch Show. Much like on Friday, we called the WWE Smackdown preview the Roman Reigns show. Very different world we live in. Firstly, I want to jump on this comment that was left for me before we started from SCW, the wrestling channel, saying, "Good to see you back, Tom." I want to say thank you for that because I always really appreciate it when someone does leave me a message like that. What we're going to do first is drop a quick tweet to basically say, I am now live. Always worth doing, and just lets people know that they can drop in and find me. I am trying to grow here, so every like, every share, every retweet always makes a big difference. I'm going to start with the news. So the biggest news that came out of last week was, of course, Drew McIntyre being out with COVID. We covered that and the instant reaction on this stream last week because thanks to you guys, we got on top of that news very, very quickly and found out as much as we could. The match at the Royal Rumble has been announced. It is still expected to go ahead, which means that Drew versus Goldberg will still happen because it is outside of the time period that Drew is expected to isolate himself. What this means more than anything is that Drew and Goldberg are essentially going to have to hype their entire feud almost entirely in hype packages and promos cut on a mobile phone. It's not going to be easy, but I suspect it's kind of what they were going for anyway, given the limitations that they had. Swaggy F has joined us saying, hello, Tom. Hello, Swaggy. Glad to see you. So there are obvious limitations that they face, particularly around Drew and Goldberg and what they have to deal with. They can't have them in the ring. They can't risk it. Drew has to be at home, isolating, and he's got a very good streaming setup there, to be fair, so he can definitely present something worth presenting. Goldberg was never likely to actually be in the show all that much, let's be completely honest. I never expected we were going to see him week in and week out, as it were, hyping this match up. That's just not really Goldberg's style, especially after so long. But it was nice to see him briefly, and I suspect the only time we'll see him again leading up to this is at the Royal Rumble, and whatever his next match is, probably at Mania. Michael Latina says, how's it going, Tom? It's going very well. Thank you for joining us, Michael. Games Gamer says, Becky Lynch is back. What? No, that's just what I'm calling the show. I've just picked the biggest name from Monday Night Raw. May have been that she wasn't on Monday Night Raw, or at least isn't when she'll come back. But I've just picked the biggest name to call the show because essentially Raw was the Becky Lynch show for a very long time. And Ed over on Twitch, my moderator, and thanks as always for that, joins us and says, need to start getting you a pitcher of water, but hello. Yes, I have very, very dark Pepsi to keep me entertained. I'm taking little sips, little tiny sips. I may or may not have a bottle just there, just in case. Guinness Gamer says, do you not think they'll do a face-to-face between Drew and Goldberg to try and pop a rating off the back of Big Bill? I suspect they would have done that and probably still will do that, but that will be the go-home show. I know SmackDown is the go-home show for the mixed pay-per-views now, but for Raw's go-home show, I always suspected we were going to end with Drew and Goldberg staring into each other's eyes gloriously, beautifully, and so on and so forth. That was always my suspicion, and even with Drew out with COVID, the amount of time required for him to self-isolate means that they can still do that. Unknown% says, Kevin Owens versus Roman Reigns confirmed. That was confirmed last week. I was kind of hoping we'd see Nakamura in that spot, but with Cesaro's win over Daniel Bryan as well, it shows they are trying to do something with both of that side. So I'm happy with the push that all three men have got, that being Nakamura, Owens, and Cesaro. Manny says, hello, welcome, Manny. Glad to see you here. For those who don't know, I'm streaming right now, both on my YouTube and on my Twitch. I'm trying to start something on Twitch ready for a massive Royal Rumble watch-along. I have a number of guests lined up, some of whom you may know, some of whom you may not. And I'm also looking for video clips from you guys. I'm looking for 30 to 45 seconds video, or you can send me a message in my DMs on Twitter, or you can say it here. your predictions for the Royal Rumble. I want to highlight some of you guys when it comes to it. So if you are joining me for the Royal Rumble watch along, it'll start an hour before the pre-show starts, and we'll be working on predictions there with a couple of guests. We'll swap some more guests in for the pre-show, and then more guests in for the main show, and a brief post-show. It's going to be very, very long. You can join me over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Tom Colohue, and of course you can subscribe here on YouTube if you haven't already. Michael Latina says, what did you think of Ding Dong Hello? I wasn't the biggest fan. I liked certain elements. The fact that Bayley forced Bianca Belair to come in through the door, ring the doorbell. I like that. Reminds me of the old APA stuff where they would be playing poker and they would force people to come in through a door which they just set over there somewhere. That was really rewarding. Like, it was one of those things. At first, it was annoying, but then it got good. Another example of that is Seth Rollins, the burn it down in the middle of his theme. When that first played, nobody had much faith in it. Then it got pretty good. I miss it. Guinness Gamer says, what did you think of Smackdown, my favorite WWE show in ages? I do have a full review up on YouTube that you can watch, but if you haven't been able to find the time to watch that, then certainly I will say that I really enjoyed it. I felt Sasha Banks and Carmella, unfortunately, are getting a bit samey. Bianca Belair and Bayley, they introduced something new, but I didn't feel it really hit the ground running. That said, everything going on with Nakamura, Cesaro, and of course Kevin Owens really worked for me. I felt Roman Reigns delivered in every possibility, and the fact that Apollo Crews was used so cleverly really worked for me as well. Anand Vazwani says, do you think WWE are risking by putting Drew versus Goldberg, considering Drew is recovering from COVID, and there may be a chance that Drew might not make the Rumble due to COVID? Drew McIntyre has no symptoms. There is certainly a possibility that he will be unable to appear as expected. However, it seems unlikely at the moment that is going to happen. He's expected to be out for 2 weeks, self-isolating. That is more than enough time to get him back in time for the go-home show for the Royal Rumble. They will test him on that night. There was something that happened a few months ago, I think it was May time, where they kept expecting someone to be back, but every time they came back, they got a positive result, even though they passed a 2-week period. And the expectation was they'd be back and fighting fit, but that person was not able to compete. That person was a champion at the time, so it made things a little bit difficult. Guinness Gamer says, I have a wild prediction. Apollo beats Big E on Friday for the title with the help of Heyman, Roman, and Jay, as he seems to be joining them, and then Big E wins the Rumble and faces Reigns. I think that is certainly very possible. I'd even say very likely, to be completely honest. It's a powerful story. Roman has certainly moved into that, as he has also moved into feuding with Nakamura and with Cesaro now. Roman is suddenly making a lot of enemies. It's also possible, of course, with the way they were building it up, that Jey Uso will win the Rumble and then be forced to concede his spot to Roman Reigns, who could go on and challenge Drew McIntyre. There are really a lot of possibilities at the moment, and that's really exciting. My throat might sound like it's getting dry. It's actually not. There is a smell of fire outside. Don't know where it's coming from. I think someone's having a back garden fire, so it's drying me out a little bit. Swaggy says, SmackDown has been fantastic since SummerSlam. I completely agree. Essentially, since Roman Reigns came back, SmackDown has been the top show, but they were building it really cleverly in the lead up to that anyway. They also, of course, had Sasha Banks versus Bayley, which helped out, and there's a lot more going on. Ed says, is there a chance of The Rock showing up at the Rumble now that WWE has confirmed fans live at WrestleMania 37? There is the same possibility there has always been. In my opinion, it was more likely that we were going to see The Rock, regardless of whether or not they were fans at this WrestleMania, than any other. The problem with The Rock was never, are there fans? The problem with The Rock was always, is he available? And right now he's more available than pretty much ever before. Anand says, any update on the latest betting odds for Royal Rumble winners? To my knowledge, Alexa Bliss is still the favorite for the women. When it comes to the men, Big E is very popular, but there's a lot more flux around that. It's difficult to keep track of, and that is a very, very good thing. Daniel Bryan, I believe, still holds tenuous grip as the favorite right now. Guinness Gamer says, what do you think the end goal with these new, seemingly out of nowhere Nakamura and Cesaro pushes is? Well, this may sound cynical to a lot of people. I don't think it's a main event push, as it were. I think it's going to be teasing the main event, certainly. However, I suspect what we're going to see at WrestleMania will be Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro against Jimmy and Jey Uso. I think that's going to be the tag title feud going into WrestleMania, which means that Dolph Ziggler and Bobby Roode are not likely to have the championships for very long. That's what I think is going to happen. Jimmy Uso is due to return soon. He was expected to return around January time, which means that chances are we may get him returning in or around the Royal Rumble, as of course the Usos returned last year in and around the Royal Rumble, and that could lead to a storyline between him and his brother, but it'll only be very, very brief before Jimmy joins the family. Unknown Percent says the same theme for WrestleMania 36 and 37. Yep, it very much is. The WWE have essentially said 2020 didn't even happen, which I kind of respect given everything that actually happened in 2020. And from there, who knows what's going to happen? I'm going to briefly talk about that in a bit more detail now. The big news over the weekend was the changes planned to the next 3 WrestleManias. They moved to Tampa to essentially contain and control the area that they're in, and the fact that they have a very good relationship with Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. They've convinced him to do, shall we say, a lot of things that might not have been ideal for his future, but it's certainly a future that he wants to have happen. So Ron DeSantis has really helped the WWE out. They will be able to have fans, but they were only guaranteed that working in Florida. From there, who knows? They are hoping that with the vaccine coming in, next year's WrestleMania, they will be able to have a full house. So they will be going for a record attendance all over again. Michael Latina says, I was thinking that the Alexa and Asuka match on Raw would lead to a title match at the Rumble, since it's not that far away. That's certainly possible. We could see that. I do have a little bit of news on that one. But my expectation here, I'll just go straight into it. The Asuka and Charlotte Tag Team Championship reign doesn't seem very long term. The plan seems to be Asuka versus Charlotte leading into WrestleMania. Now, I'm fine with that if Asuka gets the win back, because they can put on really good matches, those two, and I expect they will put on one that delivers to the same level. So with Alexa Bliss, I would like to see Alexa versus Asuka. I just unfortunately don't think it's going to happen. Guinness Gamer says, is Naomi injured, or does she have the same right to months off as the Usos got in their new deal? It's a good question. I've reported on the Usos' new deal before. There are a number of people who are entitled to a certain amount of time off every year. Randy Orton is one of them, and he's been there more than he would normally be. I believe he's only supposed to work about 200 days, but right now, because they're not working house shows, contracts go a bit further. There may or may not be question marks in the future as to how many dates someone owes the company for 2020, given that they couldn't wrestle the house shows. It's very WWE to do that. Naomi isn't injured to my knowledge. I expect we will see her in the Royal Rumble, where she'll have a big pop, a big return, and then they'll forget about her again after a couple of months. I've never been able to get a clear answer on it. And Vazwani says, do you think WWE may turn Daniel Bryan heel if he wins the Rumble, considering he has no momentum at all coming into the Rumble? Or maybe if he doesn't win this by taking regular losses, he might turn heel. I don't foresee a Daniel Bryan heel turn, because he can do a lot more for people as a face. The beauty of a face is that you don't just have to work with heels. A face can work with both face and heel, but a heel can only work with faces. So Daniel Bryan can be a star maker. He can be a kingmaker for pretty much anyone as a face, which is exactly what he is currently doing. For anyone who has just joined, if you are watching on YouTube, please do remember to click like on the video. That does help me grow, get more subscribers, more people in, and that means I'll have more time to deliver more content. And of course, for anyone who hasn't already, please remember to follow on Twitch, which is twitch.tv/Tom Colohue. A follow there makes a big difference, and if I can get to a certain level, that means I can make a living of this. Twitch is a way of doing that and delivering that. So I'm really trying to push Twitch, especially leading into the big Royal Rumble watch along that I'm trying to sort out at the moment. Swaggy says, I wish SmackDown will use more of their superstars like Aleister Black and Lars Sullivan. I know Lars has been having a lot of out of the ring problems. If you believe the rumor mill, then Lars Sullivan has had a hell of a lot of out of the ring problems. Even if you don't believe the rumor mill, the facts that have been presented shows that Lars Sullivan has had a hell of a lot of out of the ring problems. The idea was certainly for him to get pushed, but he's been pulled again. Push and pull. Lars Sullivan, unfortunately, I just don't think he's going to make it, because given the situations that he keeps finding himself in, there's never going to be There's never going to be a clear path. There just isn't. Aleister Black, I want to see more of. I want to see him back. I want to see him in championship programs. I want to see a proper feud between him and Lashley. I want to see him challenging Roman Reigns, and I want to see him against Daniel Bryan. There is so much you could do with Aleister Black, but obviously there are problems right now, which stem from, well, firstly, a certain confusion as to how to use Aleister Black, which has been long-term. I've reported on that in the past, that the WWE just don't seem to know how to use Aleister Black, as it were, which would be a massive shame. I think he's a man who could be delivering in a very real capacity, but he's just not been able to do so. And he's been hamstrung a little bit by creative choices as well. So my hope is that they can get him on SmackDown where they could use him a lot better. But obviously with Zelina Vega being fired, there are a lot of question marks about that. That certainly came as a shock given how many people were reporting that she was Vince's favorite right before it happened. As a favorite. There's quite a lot of people whose backstage reporting is essentially, Vince loves this person. Unknown Percent says Lashley wants a match against Lesnar. Yes, he does. He's been very vocal about that for a number of years now. Lesnar apparently not that fussed. Doesn't really want to do it. And of course, we've also heard that Kevin Owens has been trying to get a match with Brock Lesnar. And once again, Brock Lesnar doesn't seem all that interested. Guinness says, I don't know what it is. I just don't want Bryan to win the Rumble. He doesn't have the momentum. That's true. But in reality, the Royal Rumble is never supposed to be a pinnacle of momentum. It's supposed to be the start of momentum. So he would have until WrestleMania to build momentum from the Royal Rumble. And I don't think, to be honest, anyone is going to complain too much about Daniel Bryan winning the Rumble, knowing we will get a great match and a great story. It is a good thing for someone to be taking losses like this. Historically, the Money in the Bank winner takes a lot of losses before they cash in, because once they win the championship, that's when the momentum is supposed to begin. Guinness Games also says, let's be honest, Damian Priest is going to be in the Rumble and be eliminated by Baron Corbin and start the obligatory first feud for NXT call-up. He does correct it, call-up in the next part. That could very much be possible. Working with Baron Corbin is not a bad thing for a newcomer to the main roster. Baron Corbin is very safe and knows exactly how to work the WWE style. Essentially, if you're working with Baron Corbin, you're not going to get Vince McMahon in your ear all the time telling you need to do this, you need to do this, because Baron Corbin's already done that. It's not the worst thing in the world. Anand says, do you think we see Trish Lita and Beth Phoenix returning again in the Rumble as there is less female roster? I may be wrong regarding the count. No, I don't necessarily think we'll have all of them. Beth Phoenix, I do believe we will see. However, outside of that, I don't think we'll see many returning legends, mostly because of the risk of COVID. For example, Michelle McCool announced that she had COVID recently, so that's something they have to be aware of. I think we're going to see a lot more women from NXT. I have no issue with that. Michael Latina says, do you think Andrade will be paired up with Charlotte? I don't think those two on screen would gel as much as they seem to in real life. I just think their characters don't really connect all that much. Charlotte is very much an independent. That's how she operates. Andrade, yes, hugely benefited from having a mouthpiece, but now that he doesn't have that, it seems like the WWE might be losing faith in pushing him entirely, which is a real problem. Swaggy says we need Keith Lee in the Hurt Business in 2021. That would be great. There is a lot of people who could really benefit from being in the Hurt Business and having MVP in their corner. That said, Keith Lee is a pretty good talker and he seems to do really well working with Drew McIntyre and with Sheamus. So there's a lot of potential there. I think the Hurt Business have been hurt a little bit, if you'll forgive the pun, by their feud with Retribution, which was great, but was also kind of face-ish. So we're not sure what to call them anymore. Maybe about to sneeze, if you'll forgive me for a moment. I can definitely still smell fire. Must be the bathroom window. I'll sneeze in a moment. Please forgive me. Guinness Gamer says Lashley even said he would let Brock go over. It's a big match that surely Vince would want. I want it as well, to be completely honest. I would love to see that. I think there's a hell of a lot that they could do with that particular setup, and it's something I really want to see happen. Just, Brock chooses his opponents very, very wisely. He doesn't really want people who are equal to him. And that's not out of arrogance, that's out of storytelling. He likes underdog stories. And so do most wrestling fans. That's why he wants to work with AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan, Ricochet to an extent, Finn Balor. He wants to make you believe that these people can win. Except for when Vince calls you aside and says, yeah, just crush him. Which happens more than you would think. Guinness also says, if you could add one woman to the Hurt Business, who would you add? Probably Rhea Ripley. Thought about it. I was trying to think who on Raw, and then I remembered that that's not the limitation. Rhea Ripley. Screen Critic says, welcome back to YouTube, Tom. Thank you very much, guys. Screen Critic, Wrestling Critic on Twitter as well have been very supportive to me along the way. Very glad to see them jumping in. And there's a YouTube channel which are going to be doing very good things in the future, well worth a follow. And Anne says, what's your take on KO replacing Adam Pearce? Is it good enough storyline? I think they're treading water a little bit because Kevin Owens has had several opportunities, but they've never been one-on-one. And I suspect what he's going to have at the Royal Rumble is an opportunity that's not one-on-one. It's just really, he's treading water a little bit. But surely by the Royal Rumble, the storyline coming into WrestleMania will kick into gear. That's something I'm expecting. A known percent says, is Apollo Crews joining Roman's the Bloodline stable? Definitely seems to suggest so, but to be fair, right now, even if he doesn't, people are a lot more interested because of that moment when he was just sat behind Roman. Little tiny things like that can go a long way, and it really depends what happens on SmackDown. Guinness also says, do you watch many wrestling YouTubers? I watch a bit of Cultaholic, watch a bit of Brian Zane. That's about it at the moment. I watch a lot of people who are sort of in and around wrestling. On Twitch, I watch John Robertson, and he does the Monday Night Snackdown, where he essentially rates snacks and talks about wrestling. So that's something I enjoy. There's also a lot of people I know who are wrestling fans. So I don't really watch many pure wrestling YouTubers, though obviously I would like to do a shout out for Stephanie Chase, who is always well worth following. She has been on this channel a couple of times, and I cannot sing her praises enough. Guinness also says there has to be a way out of this Kevin Owens match. Maybe someone like Apollo costs him because he can't just lose again, can he? Certainly he can, and really that is the same situation that we'd have. It's just someone else costing him a match because you can't get a one-on-one with Roman Reigns. Just very difficult. I think at this point, to be honest, at the Royal Rumble, it will be Jimmy Uso costing Kevin Owens. So Kevin Owens will manage to, for example, handcuff Jey Uso to the ring post outside. He'll be clear through for Roman, and then in comes Jimmy Uso. That's what I suspect, personally. I am momentarily out of questions. I do still have plenty of preview to cover, but I'm going to take this opportunity to hype up the fact that I'm live on Twitch on Twitter to try and get a few more people in. So if you will forgive me a moment, I'll read it out as I type it. For anyone not aware, I recently launched a Twitch channel. Do gaming content as well as live previews for Raw and Smackdown. Now, I would love to see you there. Thank you. And it's www.twitch.tv/. Easy. Right, let's talk the preview. Let's talk about everything. I've put some notes in the private chat this time, so I'm not always going like that. I think it's screwing with my neck a little bit. Talked about that. So last week, Asuka was not used on WWE Raw. She was present, she was backstage, but she wasn't needed for the storyline. That's the exact phrase that's being used. She wasn't needed for the storyline. At the moment, the top story in the women's division is very much the return of Charlotte Flair and the flirtation between Ric Flair and Lacey Evans. So yeah, the top story in the women's division really heavily involves Ric Flair, but what else is new in that regard? And to be honest, I quite like it. We will get to see more continuation of this. We are definitely going to find out what happened in that hotel room between Lacey Evans and Ric Flair, but hopefully not in too graphic detail, because I don't think I can wash my eyes any more aggressively than I have done in the past few weeks watching what I am watching. I've mentioned before, I like the agency of Lacey Evans. I like that she's not afraid to admit to having a sexuality, and it's nice that different wrestlers can be open about that because it's realistic. People have sexualities. I always found it confusing, for example, that other than Angel Garza, which I like that as well, nobody has crushes on screen. Nobody has crushes. There's never a brief talk backstage about, oh, well, if you think that, why don't you tell him? Why don't you do just little tiny things like that? You see this when fire's getting stronger. My house may be on fire. It'll be fine. You see this in bits where so often someone's talking on a phone and they're just they're clearly just starting to talk as the camera goes on. Don't do that. Just start vamping. I like stuff like that. We will see more of this. The storyline is very much between Charlotte and Lacey. That seems to be building into the Royal Rumble, but there isn't going to be a match between the two of them. It is a storyline for the Royal Rumble. It looks like Lacey Evans may be the one eliminating Charlotte Flair at the Rumble. Now, Charlotte Flair, as we know, doesn't need to win the Royal Rumble, but she didn't need to win it last year. However, it was helpful last year to lead into the NXT storyline. Charlotte Flair, at the moment, there are no plans for her to go back to NXT or do anything there. One other thing to say about COVID and the COVID positive test there. Extra precautions are being taken around Roman Reigns, as I'm sure everyone is aware of. Kevin Owens being more serious than most about this might be one of the reasons we're seeing those two feud right now. We also, talking about the main event scene, we shouldn't expect to see Triple H follow up on his appearance last week, as that was purely an emergency situation. There were no plans for him to be on screen beforehand. He was originally supposed to be just filming something, which of course we've seen what they've been filming. The wig was incredible. But he is unlikely to be appearing. At this point, we are very much just going to be focused on Drew and Goldberg. No one's even going to really mention the fact that Triple H was on TV, because why would they? There'll just be a recap package, as usual, of what's been going on with Randy Orton and The Fiend. Speaking of The Fiend, or in this case, not speaking of The Fiend, Alexa Bliss has been getting a lot of airtime recently in The Fiend's place, and that's meant that she has been getting really solid storylines. She's going to be featuring in two angles this week. Firstly, the angle with Randy Orton. They are still building for a match between The Fiend and Randy Orton at the Royal Rumble, but I suspect that will be very much the end of the feud, because Edge is apparently due back in January. So I suspect we'll see him, if not at the Rumble, shortly afterwards, to pop a rating the next night on Raw. Alexa Bliss will also be facing Asuka in a rematch. They have had a match on Raw before, just after Asuka debuted. I suspect Alexa Bliss will not be winning, but I suspect Asuka will not be made to look particularly strong either. This could be a very good match. I suspect the finish will be inconclusive at best. I have a few more comments, so I'm going to focus on those for now and then get back to the preview a bit later. Anand says, do you think they are stretching the Fiend and Randy Orton storyline a little bit more? Yes, I do. Much like Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens, and in fact Sasha Banks and Carmella, in the build-up to the Royal Rumble, the WWE know what they want to do after the Royal Rumble. But really, for the Royal Rumble, they don't really care that much about putting on great storylines. They want to put on great matches, because the Royal Rumble is a hook in and of itself. And the Royal Rumble is enough of a hook in and of itself. So that means quite often you will see they will retread old water. Last year, Roman Reigns and Baron Corbin have been going for months. And that is something that you see quite a lot of in the build to the Royal Rumble, because the idea is they don't want to put too much focus on anyone. Because the Royal Rumble, you're not supposed to know what's going to happen. And last year, that kind of paid off. If you are just joining us on Twitch, which is twitch.tv/Tom Colohue, please do remember to click follow there. If you are just joining on YouTube, please do remember to click like. That makes a big difference in these videos, getting the word out there, getting me some more subscribers, more questions, making these last a bit longer as well. And it also means I can put more content out there. If you haven't already, please click subscribe as well. Michael Latina says, what do you think will be the outcome of the Sasha and Reginald match? Kind of guessing that's a way to get to a title match with Carmella at the Rumble. That is pretty much exactly what I suspect as well. I know we've already had Sasha versus Carmella, and several times at that, but I think this is once again another example of them not wanting to launch anything new before the Royal Rumble. Sasha and Reginald is just a way of killing a bit of time in that, much like we had Keith Lee and Randy Orton killing time a little bit so that we didn't constantly have Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton fighting. They knew that feud was going to go on forever. Ed also says, and this is a reminder to everyone watching on YouTube as well, Tom will be live with his March to Glory and Football Manager tomorrow as well. You've done your research, sir. I will be Tuesdays are Football Manager at the same time. Thursdays are Bloodborne on Twitch, and then Fridays are the Roman Reigns show. I will as well be doing a watch along for the entirety of the Royal Rumble with quite a wide collection of special guests, and there will be a few clips as well, which I will be hoping to get some participation from you guys for as well. SCW says, outside bet Rhea Ripley to win the Royal Rumble. I would love it. Never had an NXT superstar to win the Rumble before. Perhaps she will win the Raw Women's title at WrestleMania off Charlotte to make up for last year. I would like to see Rhea Ripley win the Royal Rumble. However, I would prefer not to see a match with Charlotte again, because once again, that means Charlotte would be winning a championship and holding it for maybe a month, maybe 2 months, and then immediately losing it. There is a lot of examples of this happening with Charlotte, and this is why I get when she says she's helping put other people over. She does do that. However, I don't think we need to keep going back to that well. If Rhea Ripley is going to win the Royal Rumble, I would love it to be Rhea Ripley versus Asuka. I think that would be a tremendous match. We also could have, for example, Rhea Ripley versus Sasha Banks, which we've had before, but I would have no issue seeing it again. Anand says, any update on Seth Rollins returning as a face, or will he continue his Messiah avatar? I'll go with avatar. There's still debate on that, to be completely honest. The fact that Seth Rollins no longer has any disciples, Austin Theory is gone, Buddy Murphy is no longer with him, and the fact that he literally knelt there for the greater good and was taken out by Sheamus, that leads me to believe he will be returning as a face. Also, I believe the biggest match that SmackDown can put on right now, outside of Becky Lynch, if she is returning to be on SmackDown, Becky Lynch versus Sasha, would be Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins. I think they will start building to that, or at least hinting at that soon, because I don't suspect Roman Reigns will be losing a championship before or even at WrestleMania. So I think Seth will be returning as a face. I think he'll be working against a number of people who are currently heels going forwards. But I think it'll be a bit of a slow burn. And I choose the word burn there because I think they very much want to get the words burn it down back into our litany. And so would I. Manny says, do you think T-Bar's new tweet is a hint that he's getting rid of the mask? Unsure on that one, because to be fair, he has a bit of a recognizable face. So I think the mask will probably be on for a while yet. I have mentioned this before, that when it comes to unmasking Retribution, there are no intentions to do that for a long time. Or at least they weren't when I mentioned it, which was months ago. Dominic Perez says, do you think the bell is coming off Drew and Reigns? Please bring back your music. I'm not sure what you mean by the bell is coming off. You can clarify, please. But I am live right now, and that's why the music isn't there. The music is there for the reviews, which I record in advance. So if you want to watch the Raw and SmackDown reviews that I do, they go live every Tuesday and every Saturday near the end of the day, 10 p.m. my time, so 4 hours after the show start. I can't have music on live streams at the moment. There may be ways to look into that in future, but I'll see what I can do. Thank you for always being consistent in that one. Guinness Gamer says, do you prefer to watch Raw or AEW, Tom? At the moment, I prefer AEW, to be completely honest. However, I'm sure Raw, if they make a few changes and go the right way, that will make Raw a bit more exciting as well. And it may get a bit more level, but right now, AEW is ahead for me, behind only SmackDown, because SmackDown is really appealing to me personally. Screen Critic says, who do you think Asuka will challenge at WrestleMania? I think Asuka will defend the title at WrestleMania against Charlotte. That seems to be what they're building towards. My hope is that Asuka will retain. That would be the right thing to do for me. Mags, welcome, says buongiorno, and buongiorno to you. Well, welcome, and I look forward to any questions you have, and any appearances you may make in the future, sir. Unknown Percent says, AJ Styles said he wants to go to NXT. We still haven't had a great Styles Balor feud. We still haven't. And if you can put that on NXT, at least before AJ Styles' contract expires, certainly, if we can see that on NXT, NXT may start beating AEW. So if we're going to have Bullet Club on 2 shows, let's have Bullet Club on 3 shows. Why not? Dominic clarifies, sorry, belts. I think the belt's coming off Drew McIntyre. He's basically been the champion for an entire year, and he's done very well with it, but you can oversaturate. And I worry that if we had a crowd already, people might have turned on Drew a little bit. So far, so good. He's done extremely well, as I say, and it would be no fault of his if people turned on him, but it's much like people were negative on Becky Lynch for having a championship reign for so long. People will undoubtedly get annoyed at Roman Reigns for having a championship reign for so long. People like change. So I think he'll come off Drew McIntyre, but I think Reigns will be champion for a while yet. Guinness Gamer says, who do you think will be a surprise in the Royal Rumble matches? For me, I suspect the big surprises, even though we kind of expect them, would be Beth Phoenix and Edge. That is what I suspect we will be seeing as big surprise in the Royal Rumble. I don't think they'll be bringing too many people in because of the risk of COVID. So I think this will be mostly in-house, and a lot of the surprises will be NXT talent. I think we may also see some NXT UK talent. It is a great chance to get Volta in the ring if they can, which at the moment they can, but they can't get him back. Anand says, your favorite Royal Rumble event and match of all time. I've talked about this a little bit previously. When it comes to event, it would be the year before last. If you just consider the card for that, and I'd like you guys to pick a favorite match from what I'm about to say. The opener was Asuka defending the SmackDown Women's Championship against Becky Lynch, which was great. Then we had the Usos against Shane McMahon and The Miz, which, to be honest, was also pretty good, followed by Sasha Banks versus Ronda Rousey. Then we had the Royal Rumble match for the women, which Becky Lynch won. This was followed by Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles, Brock Lesnar versus Finn Balor, and then the men's Royal Rumble, which was won by Seth Rollins. Please, anyone watching, comment with your favorite match from them, because there are some absolutely incredible ones. When it comes to the match, I believe it was 2007. I was corrected last week when I had this, so please, if you have any corrections that you have, I believe it was 2007 that you guys told me, which ended with Undertaker and Shawn Michaels just going at it for like an hour. It was incredible, great fun. Though last year's Royal Rumble match for the men, also very, very good. If you listen to my Sportskeeda podcast at the time, a couple of weeks before, I basically laid out exactly how they were going to book it, because I know exactly how they book Brock Lesnar. It's predictable, but in a good way, and really enjoyed that. Guinness Gamer says, who would you have become disciples of Seth if he was a heel? If he doesn't continue, I think it's a missed opportunity. He's better as a heel, and the Mysterio feud just tired people out. Very possible. I think he could deliver a bit more for a lot more people if he was a heel. Certainly if he, for example, would work with Nakamura and Cesaro, I think that's a really good place for him to be right now if he was a heel. So I think when it comes to disciples, it's hard to immediately pick people out, especially since Roman is essentially doing a similar gimmick right now as the savior of SmackDown and a provider for everyone. There is a similarity in the gimmick, and this is why I don't think he'll be repeating it. If he wanted disciples, it's tricky because Nakamura and Cesaro were someone else's for a while. Sami Zayn's independent. Baron Corbin already has his disciples. So there's not many people actually as heels right now who could do it. Maybe someone like Apollo Crews, they could do sort of a SmackDown version of the Hurt Business, but with Seth Rollins at the helm, maybe. I think he'd be independent, and I think that's the right choice going forwards. Dominic Perez says, any update on Ronda Rousey? Absolutely none. If there is any plans to bring her back soon, they are keeping it very close to the chest at the moment. Guinness Gamer says, I want to see AJ Styles and John Cena again. Don't know when it'll happen. I just want to see them go at it again. The matches and story were amazing. Completely agree. Lightning in a bottle at the time, and I don't think it'll be repeated. I don't think it can be repeated. Though they did deliver incredible matches. They did really go through that well quite a few times, including starting a Elimination Chamber match. And really, they delivered so strongly that I would just like to see them hinted at every now and then, but stay apart as much as possible until maybe near the end of one of their careers. Michael Latina says, do you think any team in NXT will ever win the women's tag belts? I'd love them to be won and defended in NXT. I think they very much will, but I don't think it'll be for a while, unfortunately, particularly with COVID as it is, and the fact that they are trying to keep NXT as separate as possible. If they're going to do that, I think Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez are in the prime position at the moment, though it very much depends on what happens with the Dusty Classic, because there is a women's Dusty Classic, so that would be perfect for a winner there to take on Charlotte and Asuka and go on to win, because I don't think they'll be champions for very long. Ed picks a favorite of the matches at the 2018 Royal Rumble, that being Balor versus Lesnar. And yes, thank you for confirming HBK versus Taker was the ending of 07. And Anne says, do you think Carlito may return for the Royal Rumble? WWE teased him for Raw and he didn't show up. I think that's possible. I think that's certainly a bigger deal, if that is in fact why he did not come along for it. However, we will have to see going forward. Once again, now that there has been more cases of COVID in the WWE, I'm not entirely sure they'll want to bring many people in. Guinness Gamer says, do you think John Cena will ever come back for a last full-time run? Full-time, no, I don't think he ever will. I don't think he will ever win a World Championship again. If he does return, it'll probably be for the US or Intercontinental Championships. But when it comes to John Cena, I think his time as a full-time performer is done. Much the same as Daniel Bryan at the moment. Seems to be done as a full-time performer. And I think we're going to see less of wrestlers such as Randy Orton, who's already on a moderately limited contract but could reduce his airtime further, and that'll free up time for other people to get pushes. Guinness Gamer says, who would you have do a similar open challenge style gimmick with one of the mid-card titles? Bobby Lashley. I think he's in an absolutely prime position with the United States Championship to just wrestle and defend it a hell of a lot more. I would love to see a US Championship match between Lashley and Lesnar. Why not? I think that would do great things. When it comes to the IC title, I don't think Big E's in the perfect position for it, just the way he's been booked, but there are people who can do it. Anand says, do you think WWE may bring John Cena into the Rumble to boost up ratings and also plant the seed for Cena's match at WrestleMania? Well, he is available. The fact that he appeared in the WrestleMania promo, as it were, certainly shows that. But whether or not he actually comes in and is used, that raises quite a few questions. We can't be certain of what the plan is. We've just got to hope that it's at least going to be entertaining, which I'm sure it will be. John Cena always delivers as much as possible. Swaggy, if you want me to answer your next question, you're going to have to ask the question, because to be completely honest, I've answered every question so far. I try not to dodge questions. I try to answer every single one. At the moment, though, there are no questions there. Let's see if there is anything left in my preview. The company will continue to lean on Keith Lee and Sheamus. They are being considered extremely reliable at the moment, and it's not a bad place to be for someone like Keith Lee, who's recently come up and has been delivering in matches. They want to push him. Unfortunately, they've had him in over his head, and I don't mean the man himself. I mean the booking wise. They've booked him against top level opponents, and you can't always beat top level opponents. The win against Randy Orton was fantastic, but Keith Lee's winning record hasn't been great so far. The win against Sheamus should go some way to fixing that, but it looks like we're going to get another round of The Miz and Morrison against Keith Lee and Sheamus as just four really reliable, performers. I do have questions over the booking of John Morrison. I would like to see him at some point challenge for a title. I would love to see a feud between AJ Styles and John Morrison. I've been waiting for that for years. Pardon me again, I feel like. Ever since I saw at Preston City Wrestling, my local promotion, I saw John Morrison versus Will Ospreay, which was, as you might expect, fantastic, and Lionheart, recently deceased, unfortunately, against AJ Styles. Those were some great matches, literally just around the corner for, I think, a $5 for a ticket, so £5, $7, let's say. I would love to see Morrison versus Styles, but he hasn't been used that way. Now, if he's happy and this is the booking that he wanted, all power to him. You need people to champion different divisions and be used differently. But really, I would love to see a bit more, personally. I have 4 more comments. Swaggy, you still haven't asked your question. Ed says, interesting note about the 07 and 08 Rumbles. The ending of Taker versus HBK was the first time they were in the ring against each other since the Rumble casket match in '98. And the final 2 also started the 08 Rumble. You are a very well-informed man, sir. I did not know that about the 08 Rumble. I probably did when I watched it, because I watched them back-to-back when I was catching up, but I've forgotten since. For the casket match, it's a surprise. I thought maybe there'd been an elimination chamber or something like that. Who says? For anyone who's just joined on YouTube, please do remember to click like on the video. That does help me grow and is a big help to me. And for anyone who doesn't already follow on Twitch, my Twitch is twitch.tv/Tom Colohue. You would be doing me a big favor and a big help. You can also, of course, jump on Twitter and share the tweet that I've put out there, which makes a big difference, hopefully, in making things actually happen. Okay. Guinness Gamer says, I always thought maybe The Rock would retire at WrestleMania Hollywood, but maybe Cena will. Maybe they both will, to be completely honest. I'd be against having another one of another match between The Rock and John Cena. Hopefully The Rock would be injured in doing so again. Guinness Gamer says, as well, considering it's 2023. They could be basically booking The Rock so far in advance, and they've booked that as WrestleMania Hollywood because that's the earliest they can get him. Anan says, who would be your final four for both men's and women's Royal Rumble this year? Oh, you ask a lot of questions. Charlotte's got to be in the final four. Nia Jax has got to be in the final four. They're just people, they're just superstars that people really don't want to win, which is great in a final four. You need that. It's why Roman Reigns is a consistent runner-up in Royal Rumble, because you really don't want him to win. And then you've got to have winners in there. And have Bianca Belair in there as a potential winner, and I'd have Alexa Bliss in there as a potential winner. Oh. Okay. I'd tag out Nia Jax and have Sonya Deville. So Charlotte Flair, Sonya Deville, Alexa Bliss, Bianca Belair. That is a great final four for me. For the men, really depends how they're going. With all the rumors swirling around, I'd need to have Daniel Bryan in there. I would need to. It would be essential to have Daniel Bryan involved in that. As well as that, I wouldn't have Big E. I would have him out earlier, because I think having Big E there and Daniel Bryan muddies the water. One of them has to win in that regard. But for me, he's not my winner. I think Daniel Bryan's going to win it. So I would have Daniel Bryan. I wouldn't have Big E. I'd have Bobby Lashley. One as that big heel potential runner-up, but also I just think Bobby Lashley in the final four of a Royal Rumble is a fantastic concept. And in addition to that, who else have we got? Who else do we want? Oh, it's a tough one. I'd have Randy Orton. I'd definitely have Randy Orton, because I think he's in a prime spot, really, to be that heel that we really don't want to see win a championship, because then we'd have Orton versus McIntyre again, or we'd have Orton versus Reigns again, which once again has happened a lot. So that would be too much for me, and that's the beauty of having him in a final four. And then in addition to that, we need another potential winner. This one from SmackDown. Give me Cesaro. Daniel Bryan, Bobby Lashley. Do I want Randy Orton or do I want Baron Corbin? Nobody wants Baron Corbin to win a Royal Rumble, and that makes him perfect to be in that final four, to be the runner-up. If we finished, for example, with a 5-minute match between Daniel Bryan and Baron Corbin, just constantly, I love Royal Rumbles. I just love Royal Rumbles. On Baron Corbin. So Daniel Bryan, Bobby Lashley, Baron Corbin, Cesaro. That would be a perfect final four for me. So I don't get what you're going for here. You answer my question based off the answer you gave to Guinness' question about Cena doing a last full-time run. Got it. So that would have been your question, but I already answered it with someone else's response. I am a little bit behind on the questions here. For example, but when getting to this was on 4 minutes before I got to it. That's just unfortunately due to the amount of time I take to answer questions. And I get quite a lot of questions, but trust me when I say I will get to your question. I keep going until I run out of questions. Jermaine Presley, welcome. Says, hi, Tom. Great to hear and see you back on YouTube. Thank you, Jermaine. I will be seeing you every week, hopefully. I am on YouTube Mondays and Fridays at the same time, 6 p.m. my time, so 48 minutes before this, for the Raw and SmackDown previews. In addition, I'll be doing a big Royal Rumble watch-along with a number of special guests that you may want to tune into, and hopefully I'll be getting some clips from you guys as well. I'll be reaching out on here and asking for you to send me video clips or jump in during the watch-along to say what you think about the show, and in addition, what you think will be, who you think will be the winners and losers, and so on and so forth. So you may be seeing quite a lot of me. You can also see more of me doing gaming content over on Twitch, where I also do the previews, but I'll be on Twitch only on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you want to get every bit of my content, Twitch is the way to do it. And YouTube. Follow me everywhere. Also on Twitter, @Colohue. That way, @Colohue. Alan says, also referring to my previous question, would you like to have one Hall of Famer, potential Hall of Famer in the final four of both Royal Rumble matches, and who would it be? I absolutely would not want to have that. I feel that's basically saying, okay, this is our final four, but forget that guy. I just don't feel that really helps. I know that, for example, Trish Stratus would be a great person to have in a final four if she was likely to win, but she's not. But if you had her, Sasha Banks, Alexa Bliss, and Charlotte Flair, for example, she's got history or at least some connection with all of those people. But then, like, Alexa Bliss could come out as a winner, leaving Charlotte to eliminate Sasha, then eliminate Trish, and then be eliminated by Alexa Bliss. There are ways to do it, but personally, I wouldn't. Jermaine says, just wondering, is SmackDown's women's division being better used than the Raw women's division? I only ask because Billie Kay is being used better than Peyton Royce. I don't disagree with you there. I think Billie Kay has had more of a push than Peyton Royce has. But I think this really shows what gets people over, and it's not in-ring matches. Because Peyton Royce has been wrestling in ring a lot more than Billie Kay, but people are talking about Billie Kay a lot more because she's been in more compelling storylines. I want to see more compelling storylines. They just deliver more for me, and I think they deliver for other people. The in-ring product is really good right now. They've been catching up over the last 5 years or so, definitely, particularly in the women's division, obviously. But they have now caught up, in my opinion, to a lot of very high-quality matches that happen in other promotions as well. Though I do still prefer the New Japan style. I like Billie Kay and how she's being used. I'd like to see more of it, but at the same time, I'd like to see Liv Morgan getting a bit of a push as well. So like I said, Sheamus and Keith Lee seem to be locked for the Final Four, in my opinion. We could see one or both of them there, but I get the feeling they will have a little internal storyline in the Royal Rumble. One of them will eliminate the other, probably Sheamus eliminating Keith Lee, and then doing that thing where like, oh, well, it's the Royal Rumble. You got to do it. You got to do it. You got to eliminate your friends. Royal Rumble. Every man for himself. And I know there's another 13 people due, but what are you going to do? Jermaine Presley says, who would you have face Sasha Banks for the SmackDown Women's title at WrestleMania 37? Ronda Rousey. I think they had a great match at the Royal Rumble in 2019. Keep forgetting the year that it happened. And I'd like to see more of it. And I think that will be a great way to use Ronda Rousey returning for this year's Royal Rumble, ending up facing Sasha Banks. But also, if Ronda Rousey is not available or not coming, Sonya Deville, Bianca Belair, there are a number of very good possibilities who could do great things, in my opinion. Guinness Gamer says, what's your dream wrestling interview? Vince McMahon. Absolutely Vince McMahon. No question whatsoever, Vince McMahon. I've been in roundtables with Triple H where I've been able to ask him questions. I've spoken to a number of people at NXT UK and so on and so forth. I've spoken to a number of wrestlers over the years. I would love to interview... I keep wanting to say Austin Creed because I watch so much Up, Up, Down, Down. Xavier Woods. I would love to interview Xavier Woods, but that wouldn't feel like an interview. That would feel like two guys nerding out over Streets of Rage and other games and so on and so forth. I would just love to go for a drink with Xavier Woods because I feel like we would get on so well. And by go for a drink, I mean I would like to go to wherever the hell it is that you play games. It's an arcade. It's obviously an arcade. I would love to go to an arcade and talk with Xavier Woods. But if you want really interesting interviews, Vince McMahon has all the stories in the world. He very rarely does interviews. If I could get that one, I would be asking some hard-hitting questions, I tell you that. Guinness Gamer says, have you ever been to a Raw or SmackDown or even a pay-per-view? Yes. I have been to a live Raw and SmackDown taping. The most recent one, which was the November before last, so 2019 in November in Manchester. Sorry, the Pepsi has made me a bit gassy. And I've also been to a number of NXT UK events. It's difficult to get to Raw and SmackDowns over here in the UK. It involves a lot of flying over to the US. And when I was in the US in Florida, they weren't basing out of Florida. They were all over the place, as is the natural system. So couldn't get to them. Sorry, I missed one. Michael Latina says, do you think Becky goes to Raw or SmackDown when she returns? SmackDown is loaded and Raw could really use her more. I do agree there. I think Raw could use her a lot more. One of the reasons I'm calling this the Becky Lynch show. However, the WWE have been at great pains to make sure they are not splitting up couples, which is why I think she will go to SmackDown where Seth Rollins is. However, I think it is more than likely we will have a superstar shakeup before Becky Lynch returns. Anyone expecting to see her at the Royal Rumble, I would be very surprised. Very surprised. Anand says, your match of the year 2020, excluding Undertaker versus Styles. Personally, mine was Drew versus Reigns and Banks versus Bayley. I wouldn't say that Undertaker versus Styles was my favorite, to be completely honest. There were some very good matches in 2020. I really liked in WWE, Bayley versus Asuka at SummerSlam. I thought that was an incredible match. However, my match of the year is still Kazuchika Okada versus Hiromu Takahashi. It's really, really good. Really, really good. Hiromu's wonderful. I'm a big New Japan fan. What can I say? Swaggy says, what match do you think deserves to be the main event of WrestleMania 37? Good one. Good one. Good questions. This is a difficult one. Before October, I would have said Sasha Banks versus Bayley. I'd like to see a women's main event. If Ronda Rousey, for example, does come back and we can get Ronda Rousey versus Sasha Banks, give me that. If Asuka is able to defend against Charlotte Flair, give me that as a main event. I think it's time for the women to have a main event again, but it can be one-on-one. However, when it comes to the men's side, Roman Reigns is really well poised to go up against pretty much anyone. If Brock Lesnar returns and tries to essentially get Paul Heyman back, we could see that. But I think they've done that to death. Rollins versus Reigns possibly is probably the biggest match they could put on. I don't think Drew is going to be main eventing, unfortunately. We may see Roman versus Daniel Bryan. That, I think, is the most logical main event. Guinness Gamer says, when you were reporting wrestling news, were you ever in contact with wrestlers in WWE? Must have been so cool if you were. Yeah, I spoke to a few people backstage. Not many. I never had the sources that the big names in wrestling journalism do. Never had that. Never. It was a variety of people at a variety of levels in a variety of different promotions and so on and so forth. It's just people you get to know. Like I mentioned earlier that the wrestling company around the corner for me had John Morrison in for Wrestler Will Ospreay. I've got a picture of me and Matt Hardy, for example. I'm in no way saying that I was speaking regularly to those people. That is not the case. But you get to meet people. And then, of course, when you start interviewing them professionally, some people stay in touch. And Anne says, in terms of talent, how would you rank these? Bayley, Sonya Deville, Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley. You've asked some really good questions there. You've also asked about some of my favorites. I really rate Bayley very highly. I love the way she sells. I think she was previously held back by a lack of mic time, but she got a lot better very quickly, to be completely honest. The heel turn really worked in her favor there. Sonya Deville is probably one of my favorites. Bianca Belair as well, really delivering. Rhea Ripley, I've written articles about. If you are aware of the website Bell to Bells, which is Kristen Ashley and Warren Hayes' website, when that first launched, I was asked if I would help out write a couple of articles there. I wrote something on Natalia wrestling in Saudi Arabia because she'd mentioned it in an interview with a colleague of mine called Rick Uccino. She'd mentioned it in an interview, and that was a year before the actual match happened, which is why I was able to report on Sportskeeda that the match was still going ahead when they got the opportunity to do it, and that Natalia would definitely be in it. The other article, Rhea Ripley, basically just saying if they get out of Rhea Ripley's way, she'll soar. And then she did. And she read that article. She clicked like on it. She engaged on Twitter. That's how you know that people have seen these things. It meant a lot to me that she liked it enough to do that. And she really... You're asking about my actual favorites. Sonya Deville, Rhea Ripley, Bayley, Bianca Belair. I hate doing that. Guinness Gamer says, what was your in-ring favorite match of WrestleMania? Feels so weird to look back on it with complete silence. For me, it was either KO versus Rollins or Rhea versus Charlotte. Ripley versus Charlotte was a real favorite of mine. I love how they used the absence of noise, the silence. Charlotte was really clever in the way she used the silence, and Rhea played into it really well. The submission element in that match added a lot to it. I also really like the tag team championship match, Asuka and Kairi Sane versus Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss. I really liked that. Outside of that, when I talk about the men's matches, KO versus Rollins was obviously very good and had very big spots. But outside of that, it's difficult. I liked a few matches, for example, Aleister Black versus Bobby Lashley, but they unfortunately don't live long in the memory. It says underrated match of the year in my mind is a story told in Dolph versus Drew at Extreme Rules. They put on a really good match, particularly during the match. However, the fact that Dolph was never really clearly either a face or a heel in it hindered it a little bit for me, hindered the feud. It made Drew look like an absolute monster, though, and this really added a lot to it. This wasn't long before the King of the Ring tournament, where Drew was expected to get a nice big push and at least a championship match. He wasn't able to do that. I've reported on this previously that Drew was going to get a real big push right then and there. It just never happened. But it was held back until the next opportunity, which was WrestleMania. There are some very good underrated matches, though. Guinness Gamer says, are you happy with the announcement that WrestleMania is 2 nights? Yes, I am. I have been very happy with pay-per-view lengths over the last year. Now, it always confuses me that the WWE want to do 7, 8-hour pay-per-views when you've got everyone captive in the arena and people are knackered by the main event. But when there's no one in the arena, they only want to do a 3-hour show maximum. And they've worked hard to do that. They've worked hard to make sure no show goes too long. I think the Royal Rumble will be the end of that. But if you look back at SummerSlam, they did 2 pay-per-views instead of 1. They literally did a pay-per-view the next week in Payback. They just literally booked 2 so that 1 could be an overflow pay-per-view. They didn't need to do that, but they did that. I think having it 2 nights allows things room to breathe. And as a fan, I really look forward to watching that a lot more, knowing that I'm not going to be awake until 8 a.m. Because usually for WrestleMania, it starts at around midnight my time, it finishes around 7:30 in the morning, and then there's a post-show buzz. So by the time I'm in bed, it's light out. It's not good. It's not good. Anan says, do you think there is a chance we may see the 4 horsewomen of WWE versus a 4 horsewomen led by Ronda Rousey? This match was teased many a time when Rousey was yet to make her debut. I think they've missed the boat. I think they've got all the talent they need. They could make it happen, but I just think they've missed the boat on it. That said, I was feeling that when it comes to Sasha Banks and Bayley, and I don't feel that Hell in a Cell match was as heated as it could have been if maybe they'd done it a year before. But for me, I think they could still do it. It would be a great Survivor Series match, don't get me wrong on that one. But the 4 horsewomen are very rarely out of the championship picture. And if Rousey was there, she wouldn't be out of this championship picture either. So really hard to say. Jermaine says, do you think we will get Sasha Banks versus Kaylee Ray? I only say this because I want Worlds Collide Smackdown versus NXT UK. Can you imagine Roman Reigns versus Walter? I can, and I like it. And that is a very fun idea. I don't think we'll get that for a long time. Particularly because, obviously, Kaylee Ray is a champion over in NXT UK. I've interviewed Kaylee Ray 2 times. It's always good when you've interviewed someone and then they remember you the next time. Because wrestlers are interviewed by a whole lot of people, just a whole lot of people. It always confuses me how she can play a heel so effectively when she is absolutely lovely. She's genuinely one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. Wonderful person. But because she is a champion in NXT UK needs her, at least for now. After that, we'll see what happens. But with NXT UK, you tend to have champions who run for a very long time due to how small the roster is there. They work with a very contained roster. Swaggy says, book yourself in a WrestleMania main event, Tom Colohue versus whatever title you want to challenge for. Just to be clear here, if I am being booked into a WrestleMania main event, I am not just losing, I am getting my ass kicked. Heavy. I ain't challenging for championships. It's just not happening. But if I'm going to do it, let's go all the way. Let's book myself in a last man standing match with Brock Lesnar, and let's have him throw me through some tables off the top of a ladder. You're going to go in a way that you remember. This one. Anan says, favorite Elimination Chamber match of all time. Ooh. I really liked the one featuring Baron Corbin. Yeah, I said it. The Miz. You may have to help me with some of these. Bray Wyatt, Dean Ambrose, AJ Styles, and I believe John Cena. I really, really liked that one. That was Ambrose when they were using him like he was John Moxley. He was in the middle of a really strong feud with AJ Styles. AJ Styles was in the middle of a really strong feud with John Cena, and Bray Wyatt picked up the win. That is a great showing, if you ask me personally. I really quite like that. I have just spotted that Brandon, aka SW Lounge, has followed over on Twitch. Thank you very much, Brandon, for joining me. So that was a really fun one for me, and I think that's my favorite, though I did really enjoy the first one, which was won by Shawn Michaels. I believe that was the first one. And also says your favorite interview you had with WWE superstars. Interesting. Thank you, Ed, for reminding me that is Elimination Chamber 2017. When it comes to the interview, I've had some good round tables. I really enjoyed being in a round table with Cesaro. Really enjoyed that. That was fantastic. That man is a really good talker. And at the time, he wasn't being given time on the microphone. And I was able to ask him whether he felt he'd proven Vince McMahon wrong in some of the comments that Vince McMahon had asked previously. It was really fulfilling in that regard. At the same time, I really enjoyed the pseudo roundtable interview with Nikki Cross and Cedric Alexander. Again, really nice, really life-affirming people. You left feeling like you just had a great time. Just a great time. Outside of that, William Regal can really talk. He's got a lot of stories. I've still got the audio for that. So if people are interested, I can put that on YouTube. I can pull clips out and stick that on here just in the middle of a stream. So I've still got all that. And it was so much fun. So much fun. Ed has suggested Tom Colohue versus Adam Pacitti. Adam Pacitti is a very brave man. We know that from some of the punishment videos he's done with Cultaholic and other companies. So if he's down, I would be. Swaggy says, who would you like to take the title off Drew? I would like Bobby Lashley to get a run with the title. Agreed. I think Bobby Lashley is perfect to take the title off Drew, particularly if that leads to him defending it successfully against Brock Lesnar. Again, opportunities in every direction there. There is so much that they could do, and it would be a real shame if they were not able to do it. I do think there should be a bit more rotation in the title scene once Drew loses it, because you don't want it on one person for too long. I think Drew will drop out of the title scene for at least a little bit, and that will be good for him to take some of the pressure off, particularly. But outside of that, Samoa Joe. I think I've mentioned this before, but throw Samoa Joe in the Royal Rumble. Literally, have it be number 24, 25. His music hits. He stands up from the announce table, takes off his shirt, gets into the ring, beats everyone, wins the Rumble, beats up Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania, and that's it. That's your whole story. There's no face or heel dynamic. It's just Samoa Joe gets into the ring, cuts a promo against Drew McIntyre cuts a promo back. It's going to be so fun. And then the two of them beat each other up. Do it every week. I don't care. It'd be incredible. Guinness Gamers says, I know NXT is just starting to get a tag scene together again, but the main roster is also in dire need of some new blood. What teams would you call up? Is it finally time for the Undisputed Era? The Undisputed Era don't all want to come up. They don't. I've reported this previously. Now Adam Cole is coming out and saying that he's very happy where he is, essentially. So that's really confirmation of the report I made. It's a difficult time for a lot of people in NXT because they don't want to be called up. I think the WWE has enough tag teams. They just need to balance them out a bit more. They've also got a lot of people injured. Jimmy Uso injured at the moment. Kofi Kingston injured at the moment. Ivar, I believe it is, from Viking Raiders, injured. That's 3 teams out. They also are missing some teams that they intended to push. The Forgotten Sons. They were planning to push them. That did not work out. People did not want to work with the Forgotten Sons. So I think they have enough. They also have a number of people who aren't being used all that much who might benefit from being in a tag team. Chad Gable and Otis, for example. I don't know why they broke up Otis and Tucker. You could still have pushed Otis with a tag team partner, but his push has very much been pulled. Guinness Gamer says, should Cedric be the one to eventually dethrone Bobby Lashley? They could put really good matches together. That's a really good shout. I'm a big fan of Cedric, particularly after the interview, when you get to know someone a bit more. And I respected the man before, but after actually meeting him a little bit, your respect goes through the roof. I would like to see that. I think that's a logical progression, a storyline progression. I don't think Bobby Lashley will be losing the title for a while. It was literally the belt was made with his specifications, I'll tell you. Alan says, would love to see your interviews on your YouTube channel. I can definitely see about making that. At the moment, I'm looking to interview people who are more grassroots level, people who are indie wrestlers and so on and so forth. I'm going to be reaching out to a lot more in the near future. I've got an interview with Sheik El Sham that you may enjoy, who is a wrestler quite local to me, who's been putting on very good matches for a while, and is that heel that really puts people over. He gets it, you know? So I recommend listening to that. But if there's anyone people want me to interview on the indie scene, by all means, let me know, because I'll happily reach out with an email and see who wants it. Unknown Percent says, Cross with Scarlett versus Fiend with Alexa will be awesome. Yes, it will. Just, yes. Yes, it will. That's a really good call. That could be a lot of fun. That pairing, particularly that four, seem like they're made for each other, just made for each other. So I'd love to see that. So I can suggest Tom Colohue versus Adam Pacitti in a 3 stages of hell match at WrestleMania 39. You guys really want to see me get beat up, don't you? Love you guys too. Jermaine says, I always thought the best person to take title off of Roman Reigns should be either Keith Lee or Big E. What do you think? I think there are a number of good options when it comes to that. I think Kevin Owens would have been a good one based on the whole family versus family thing. But I think we will see essentially a greater faction building around Roman Reigns, and whoever does eventually take that championship will be someone who builds a faction around themselves. Big E in the New Day, that would make a lot of sense. But then they broke up the New Day. Michael Latina says, do you think this is a week that Kaylee Ray loses a belt? I'd love to see Ginny as NXT UK champion. I do not. I know Ginny is being built. She's been pushed very strongly essentially since the beginning of NXT UK, at least when it comes to marketing and the like. I've seen her wrestle quite a few good matches. I watched both NXT UK's takeovers in Blackpool, because obviously I live in Blackpool and I got tickets to both of them. I've still got clips. For example, I was there when the Undisputed Era stormed Imperium. I was just filming from the top because may or may not have known it was coming. There was a few journalists who saw the Undisputed Era in the hotel, because we were there in the hotel interviewing people. I won't ever say the hotel we were at, but there were quite a few people who were smart with this and get the same hotel. For example, when the WWE go to Manchester, I know the hotel they're going to stay at. So I will usually book in that hotel as well, because it's just easier getting to interviews. If they ask you to come to an interview at 9 o'clock in the morning, I know that I can get up, get breakfast, and be ready for that interview because I'm at the same hotel. So I've seen quite a lot of both of these women in action. I think Kaylee Ray holds on to the belt for a while longer yet. I'm not sure who will take it from her, though. A lot of people have been beat along the way. Anand says, do you think WWE is booking Drew similarly to the way they had booked Cena, I guess between 2005, 2008, where Cena was regularly in title pictures and holding title on many of the occasions? When they really want to push someone, they will always be in and around the title scene. The title is there to put people over. Being the champion is something that puts you over. It also puts over the belt. For example, if someone is lower down the totem pole, for example, if someone is a mid-carder and they win the top championship, the belt is putting them over. The belt is getting eyes on them. If someone like Roman Reigns is the champion, they are getting the belt over. They are making that belt mean more, so that when someone does win that belt, it puts them over instead. It's one of those. You accrue capital and then you give capital. So that's the way they always do things with people they want to be the top champion for a long time to come. Drew McIntyre is someone they have extreme faith in. And he's proven to be worth it, I've got to say. Swaggy F says, WWE needs to rebuild their tag team division badly. We don't want thrown together tag teams unless it makes sense. You can't rebuild a tag division without tag teams. So even if the teams are initially thrown together, it can be made to make sense in future. I think the perfect example of this is Sheamus and Cesaro. They became one of the best tag teams and well deserving of the tag team reigns that they have. They put on great matches with the Shield, particularly for me, very memorable. And basically everyone they stepped in a ring with. The feud with the Hardy Boys. They only said Hardy Bros. That's very different. The feud with the Hardy Bros. The feud with the Hardy Bros really stands out for me, for example. Now, Sheamus and Cesaro were very much just thrown together, but it worked. And sometimes, if you just throw a team together, it'll work. Ed says, Matt Taven is always a great interview. Certainly that's something I can reach out and see. And try and contact Ring of Honor. We'll see how that goes. And I'll go from there. In the meantime, however, I am out of questions. Let's see if there's anything left of the preview, which I started an hour and 15 minutes ago. Nope, that is pretty much everything I wanted to cover. I'm just going to have a quick look at everything here. Oh, Elias and Jeff Hardy are feuding. And AJ Styles seems to be feuding with Drew Gulak. There's not much I can say about them, to be completely honest. It's difficult to preview something. But last week, Jeff Hardy got a win against Jackson Riker, and he lost against Elias. This week, I'm sure we will see Elias try to get his win back. We'll see how that goes. In addition, Matt Riddle will be in his corner now, more than ever, I'm sure. But he is feuding with Bobby Lashley, kind of. I suspect we'll see Riddle versus Lashley being built and built and built. We are probably going to see MVP versus Matt Riddle again, but we'll see how that goes. This time, I suspect Riddle will be beating MVP. In addition, I mentioned AJ Styles and Drew Gulak. That was basically because there was space on the card, so they made up a storyline very last minute. Drew Gulak, however, did very well. The match was very good, so I think we will see him trying to, at least in a backstage segment, earn his way into the Royal Rumble, which makes a lot of sense and should be happening more often. Last few comments. And says, do you think do you think Finn Balor will return to the main roster in this year, considering the way he has been booked in NXT till now and his love for NXT? Personally, I would love to see him in the Rumble this year. We may see him in the Rumble this year, but he would still be as NXT. To my knowledge, he is very, very happy in NXT. I did report a few months ago about Finn Balor having no interest in using the Demon King in NXT because it felt like a crutch. In an interview with the aforementioned Stephanie Chase, who you should follow on YouTube if you want to see that interview, you can pop over at Stephanie M. Chase. He did confirm that. She asked the question, not because of that, but in process of it, because the Demon King was a big thing on the main roster, but it did become a crutch. It did become an element of, if Finn Balor is going to win, he will be the Demon King. If he's going to lose, he will not be. That's not a great way to do things. So he seems a lot happier now. However, we'll see how it goes after losing the championship to Karrion Kross. We will have to see. Swaggy says the Bar was a really fun tag team. Yes, they were. And Ed says AJ versus Drew Gulak can be good, though. I thought the match was really very good. I really did. Michael Latina says, why is it that Drew Gulak has to earn his spot in the Rumble, but no one else has to? Good question. WWE has never answered it, but from where I'm sitting, marketability. I am going to end the stream there. Thank you to everyone who's joined me. If you have joined on YouTube, please do remember to like, share, and subscribe. If you have not already joined on Twitch, it's twitch.tv/Tom Colohue. Please follow there. It does make a big difference. I'm trying to build up to something there. And remember, in 13 days, the Royal Rumble, there will be a live watch along. It will be about 7 hours long on my YouTube, on my Twitch. There will be special guests. Please do remember to join me there. I will be putting tweets out soon, and I implore everyone to share them as much as possible. That is how I am trying to essentially launch this part of my career, and I would really appreciate any help you guys can give while doing that. I have been Tom Colohue. Thank you very much for joining, and I hope to see you next time.